Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles, the Friday podcast all about your Kindle. I'm Len Edgerly. Today is January 26th, 2018. Greetings from downtown Denver, Colorado, where this week I traveled by Skype to Manhattan for a conversation with Jon Fine, who 3 months ago took an important new job at a New York publisher that is most definitely not trying to hold back the adoption of ebooks. That publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, has been a favorite of mine ever since its debut 8 years ago.
No company in publishing right now is better aligned with Amazon in terms of our focus on the customer experience, in terms of our focus on ebooks and driving growth in ebooks.
First up in news, the Amazon Go store opened Monday, January 22nd at 2131 7th Avenue in Seattle. That's right in the middle of the Amazon HQ1 buildings. It is a cashierless store that we've heard about a lot in the past year when it has run strictly for Amazon employees, where they were gathering data on how it would work. There were a number of reports, and most of them said it felt like shoplifting. You go in, you buy your stuff, and then you just walk out. And so it's a... And the people who were lined up to go into a store where they wouldn't have to wait in line, the reporting of their comments was uniformly favorable. Some concerns about job losses. The cashiers represent the second largest number of jobs in the U.S., so this is one of those transitions which, as it comes, it's not going to come just because one store opens, but this is a harbinger of things that will have dramatic impact on society. You can get a feel for what the store looks like if you download the Amazon Go app to your smartphone. One thing I spotted in the little tutorial that it gives is that you can let other people come in with you. You put your QR code down on the reader, which is like a subway turnstile, and then you let other people go in front of you, and then anything they put into their bags will be charged to your account. It also highlights deals. Looking through what was on the app, it looked like it was mainly kind of a food store. There's fresh food and lunches, and the people who have been using the store for Amazon have gotten so good at getting in and out, they can sort of get in there, grab a bite to eat, and be out in about 30 seconds and have it hit their app. Amazon.com has a video that is a good illustration of it. The part I like the best is it shows a woman who's reaching for some kind of a cheesecake sweet, a muffin. Then she puts it back. She thinks, oh, I don't really need that. And then she furtively comes and takes it, so she does walk out with a muffin. The app shows how much time you spent in the store, and in the people that were testing it, it seemed like between 5 and 15 minutes is all it took for the smartphone app to show how much the person had spent in the store. It's open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, not on the weekends. Interesting information. If you click on the We're Hiring link at the bottom of that Amazon page, it shows that there are 42 Amazon Go positions open, 39 of them in Seattle, but one each in Boston, London, and Mexico City. I wonder if that tells us anything. USA Today reported that as many as 100 people were lined up around the block. Visitors were eager to share their trip times. That was sort of the badge of honor to show how quickly you could get in and out of the store. Amazon said that its only effort or focus at this point is to make sure that the store is effortless and magical for customers. One story, that I think it was the USA Today story, said it's not hard to imagine that this store is going to become a tourist attraction in Seattle, like the Space Noodle. The Space Noodle. I think I'm leaving that in. Like the Space Needle or Pike Place Market. Darlene said I should just get on a plane and fly out there and try it, and I was sorely tempted, but I'm sure there'll be a chance to give it a try. The Guardian story highlighted this aspect that fascinates me because Amazon has been using this store for a year with employees, and that, I think, shows the kind of preparation that they do on these kinds of projects. It's been over 5 years since Jeff Bezos announced drone delivery, which some thought, it's just a publicity stunt for the Christmas shopping season. And it's clear that great number of resources and testing, especially in the UK, has been going into that effort. And with this retail technology experiment that's been going on for a year of actual employees using it and trying it and making it better. The store is 1,800 square feet. By comparison, Amazon bookstores are quite a bit larger, 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. And the camera system, this is from The Atlantic, was inspired by the same technology that guides self-driving cars. There's banks of cameras overhead and all kinds of sensors that are just, making it easy to find out exactly what you put in your bag and what you put back on the shelf and what to charge when you're done. I think this is pretty exciting. When I think about this and the kinds of changes that are likely in retail, it makes me think that my grandsons one day will be amazed when I tell them that I remember the first Amazon Go store opening. In a similar way, I was amazed to hear that my grandfather was the first person to have a car in Sudbury, Massachusetts, or maybe he was the first person to see an airplane fly over town. These stories get blended together over the years, but they all make clear how quickly technology changes everything. Next, I've got a couple of stories that have to do with competition for the Kindle. This seems to be odd timing with Amazon accounting for upwards of 90% of ebook sales, but this week there were somewhat breathless reports of two new sources of competition. One was Walmart partnering with Kobo to sell Kobo e-readers in Walmart stores, and then Apple buffing up its iBooks platform and hiring someone from Amazon to help them do it. Publishers Weekly reported the Walmart Kobo story on January 26th. Said that Kobo e-readers, ebooks, audiobook content will be available at 4,000 Walmart stores, and Walmart.com later this year will also offer digital book cards at the stores. And there will be a Walmart Kobo co-branded app for iOS and Android. This news reminds me of the partnership that Kobo had with the American Booksellers Association a while back, and it was going to help indie bookstores compete with the Kindle by offering Kobo readers in stores. It never really went anywhere, and a guy I knew that was involved in it said the big problem was that Kobo never backed up the program by selling Kobos in big box stores like Walmart. So anyway, that piece is now coming. I think it's probably a little late. The Kobo is a nice device. I've always been impressed with it, but the changes and the improvements over the last 10 years in the Kindle platform, I probably need to get a Kobo and just see what it's like to read with one. But my assumption is that it's at this point the two platforms have diverged so significantly in user features that it's hard to imagine Kindle losing its dominance anytime soon. The other one is Apple saying that they're going to change iBooks to books, and that there was an executive hired from Amazon. Well, this is always kind of scary. You think, gee whiz, which person at Amazon has shifted over to Apple to bring all the secrets that they learned? It turns out that the Amazon executive that has been hired, he's got a pretty impressive title, Global Head of iBooks at Apple. He turns out to be a guy who worked at Amazon for only a year and 7 months. He was Senior Vice President and General Manager for Audible Channels. That was an interesting, specific content initiative of Audible, but he wasn't in any way running Audible in kind of an overall position. And before that, Kashif Zafar, the guy's name, had the dubious distinction of serving as VP for digital content for the Nook at Barnes & Noble. The report of an easier-to-use app and calling it books instead of iBooks. It reminds me of an energetic talk at a Digital Book World conference 5 years ago given by the director of Apple's iBooks store, Keith Moore. He touted 1 million new iBooks users a week because of improvements in the app. I think it was going to be resident on the iPhone operating system at that time. And he thought that the ability to share books with family members was going to be a big deal. Well, Apple's share of the ebook market was about 10% 5 years ago, and author earnings estimated its share at 9% a year ago, when Amazon's share was 83.3%. I think some people have called it higher, of around 90% now. Apple does have some advantages if it chooses to use them. Bradley Metrock wrote an interesting analysis of what Apple should do to make good on its intention to strengthen its ebook business. One idea that I liked in particular was to take advantage of Apple's dominance of the podcasting world and make sure links between books and podcast episodes with author interviews are easy to set up and follow. Bradley also said it's a no-brainer that there should be an Apple Books app available on Android, Windows, and within Alexa devices. I would add, why not the Kindle Fire too? It'd be good to have if they're really going to expand this thing, have an Apple Books app there. Not very likely. For the tech tip from Joel Anderson, he wrote, it's probably not that interesting to most listeners, but I just noticed that a number of previously non-text-to-speech books from Simon & Schuster Digital are now allowing it. I found that for these books, copies on my Fire were not enabled, but when I deleted and reloaded them, they were turned on. I've noticed this on Star Trek novels, of which I have more than a few, not sure if it's across the board. Bufo Calvin wrote about this also in November, so this is some progress on publishers that were withholding text-to-speech because they thought it somehow undermined the rights of the authors. Also, for Tech Tip, I got a link from Suzanne Skyvara, a woman I know at Goodreads. I was working on setting up an interview in the future with Otis Chandler. And she had done notes on a book called Principles, Life and Work by Ray Dalio. And when I clicked on it, it was a wonderful annotations and notes that she had made on the book. And it struck me that it was a really handy way if you were reading a book and you wanted to share your thoughts with somebody. You could just do this through Goodreads and port your annotations from your Kindle to Goodreads, and then you have something to share, and obviously people over at Goodreads could be following what you're doing. This is pretty slick, the way it's working through the Goodreads integration, and I plan to follow up on it later when I talk to Otis. Alexa, how many days has it been since October 30th, 2017?
2 months and 28 days.
That's how long Jon Fine has been at his new job as Senior Vice President and Publisher of Open Road Integrated Media in New York City. Open Road is a digital pioneer in book publishing, and Jon Fine has had as many interesting jobs in media and publishing as anyone I know, including positions at NBC, Random House, Amazon, and now Open Road. Jon is a strategic thinker and a straight shooter, qualities that have made him an engaging guest on past episodes of the show. I've also enjoyed following Open Road's growth through interviews with co-founder Jane Friedman and the current CEO Paul Slavin. I connected with Jon by Skype at his new office on Wednesday, January 24th. I began by asking him to look back at Open Road's creation 8 years ago and to describe what attracted him to join the publisher last fall.
Jane had started the firm back in 2009, I want to say, and really the mission that she defined was bringing great books in digital to a hungry audience, a voracious audience. And really with tremendous success when they started out, in part because their timing was perfect. Kindle had just launched really in the year and a half or so before. And at Amazon, we had some issues getting selection, essentially, getting publishers to convert to ebook. I don't know if you recall the windowing idea that existed for a while. And also there were, contractual issues and such that I think slowed things down. So Jane really took advantage of the opportunity in a way that served Amazon's interests and its customers' interests very effectively. But fast forward a few years later, it wasn't clear to me that they had really innovated. So when I was approached about this role, I sort of was like, wow, what are you guys doing? Are you guys still, America's oldest living startup, as I like to call us? And in fact, I was really impressed as I started to dig into what Open Road was doing. It's really, the mission is really in many ways the same. It's about bringing great stories to digital life. But the manner in which they are doing it has definitely changed over the years. So the team, the innovation, the opportunity, and also, frankly, the range of different activities I could participate in. Most of the time when I was looking at jobs outside, once I left Amazon, I found most of the time, the roles were fairly narrow or circumscribed, as large organizations get to be. And in fact, Amazon is experiencing that as well now. I saw my own job sort of narrowing into a more traditional, less far-ranging role as the company matured. I really love having that range of opportunities, basically to screw up every day. I like to diversify in that sense. And so that was another real calling card. Part of the luck of the opportunity was, as you may know, I was general counsel for a startup called Optically. It's a marketing technology company that Ingram has since absorbed. And because we at Optically were working with Open Road at the time, I was really able to get some true insight into the depth of the team and the success of the pivot that the company was making. Still in line with the original goal, bringing great books in digital to a hungry, voracious audience, but doing it in different ways.
What's the pivot? What changed?
What's really changed is the recognition that it's not about us publishing books. It's about us starting with customers, readers, and working backwards to deliver great stories and anything else they might want down the road. And what was intriguing to me about that, frankly, that is very much the way we approach the world at Amazon. You start with the customer and you work backwards to deliver to them what they want. So that whole philosophy is something that marks Open Road. And the way it has played out in a practical, pragmatic sense is over the past few years, Open Road really developed incredible prowess as a digital marketer. Something that I think a lot of other publishers could do well to improve. I think that's one of the great challenges facing most of traditional publishing. I mean, what the team here has done, and I take no credit for it, is develop really a proprietary system. We have a larger marketing program called Ignition. We'll talk about it in a little while. But the idea in short form is, look, we're so good at marketing our books that other publishers are now looking to us for help marketing their books. And from my standpoint and from the senior team standpoint, from the company's standpoint, we don't have an issue with that at all. In fact, again, if you start with the concept that we're here to serve our customers, the fact that we have figured out innovative ways to do that, ways that other publishers really haven't considered in the past, is fascinating. And I think really reflects the way the market has developed. I mean, most readers, when asked, wouldn't be able to tell you who published their book. And so we have a coterie of publishers joining us. I can't really name all of them yet, but I can tell you HMH, for example, have given us a bunch of their titles to help promote.
I'll break in here to let you know that HMH stands for Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt. That's a venerable Boston-based education and trade publisher that dates back to 1832 with Emerson, Hawthorne, and Thoreau among its first authors. The company for calendar year 2016 reported $1.4 billion in sales.
And in fact, what we do is we take over, and this we can talk about Ignition now. We take the list. We curate the list. We're very good in certain sectors. We ask HMH, for example, to share with us, say, a couple of hundred titles that we think will work well with our audience. We control the marketing and pricing and promotional work. And essentially what we're saying to publishers is, look, we're going to make at least as much as you did the year before with these titles, and you're going to get that all by yourself. And anything above that, any uplift, we'll share that with you at the gross level. We're not even deducting expenses. And again, it's sort of this amazing win-win because we have customers who are hungry for these titles. These publishers have not necessarily demonstrated a facility with certain parts of their list, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. And we have a team that is incredibly strong and powerful at getting these books out here and driving people to buy them.
Let me ask you, you mentioned that you've got our customers. So are the customers that Open Road brings to this and starts with just people who have bought Open Road books, or are they also people that are subscribing to the various newsletters that you seem to have had a lot of success with?
It's exactly that. It's the people who we have brought into our world, whether through our newsletters, our content sites. We have 6 of those. We have a very strong early bird books email discounting facility, and that audience has proven to be not only extremely hungry for books, but extremely hungry, period. And so we see a great opportunity to continue to develop that audience in ways beyond what we've done so far.
The new program, Ignition, it strikes me that would be a pretty easy sell. You're basically offering the publisher a chance to make as much money on these titles as they did before and then share anything extra. What's the downside for a publisher to sign on to that kind of a new way to promote their books?
Well, I think that there's a couple of issues that publishers have to think about here. I think initially when you think about going to a publisher and saying, hey, we want to help you sell your books, there's something kind of emasculating about that. You're saying they're not doing a good enough job on their own. And I think that creates some hesitancy. I think there's also a general resistance to change that certainly I have observed throughout my career in publishing, whether at Knopf or at Amazon, where we really tried to push innovation. And we're seeing the same thing here. It's a sense of discomfort, and one I can understand, with doing things differently and not necessarily seeing all the repercussions or ramifications of taking those steps. I also think that at least for the larger houses, there is a little bit of conflict with the mission. I would say, oversimplifying, that Open Road is extraordinarily focused on growing ebook audience and driving, because of the nature of the market, most of that business through Amazon. I would say that the top five, and this is going to be an overgeneralization, but I think we've seen it, and you've seen it in all the reporting you've done and conversations you've had. There is a real desire to prop up print, I think, at the expense of ebooks. And a real fear, and one you can understand, about driving any more market segment share to Amazon. And I do think it's unfortunate because, and somewhat of a, I guess, a fossil of this, the love-hate relationship that Amazon tends to engender. People tend to paint Amazon as either good or evil. And I think that, the truth, like most things, lies somewhere in between. What Ignition, and particularly the white glove aspect of Ignition, which is what we're talking about here, offers is really what I consider a surgical opportunity to take advantage of Amazon's strength and audience in an area of their list. I call it the dark list, as opposed to front list and back list. Really, back list, and again, oversimplifying, is not just one entity. It's the active backlist that people are working, the marketing team is working. But then there's that sort of dark, dusty, cobweb-filled part of the catalog that every publisher has. They shouldn't be ashamed of it. But those are the books that aren't being sold in any other of the supply side, any of the other channels that books are normally sold in. They haven't been in bookstores in years. And so it's a real opportunity, I think, to take what Amazon does really well and what we do really well and exploit their strengths in a way that does not in any way that we can see impact negatively the rest of their supply side relationships. So, I think part of it is it really is a socialization process. It really is taking people through it. As I said, we've got a bunch of publishers now coming on. HMH led that charge. I think that we'll see a bunch more in the coming weeks. And our goal at the end of the day, we have 10,000 books in our catalog, 2,500 authors. We essentially want to match or surpass that in terms of our white glove opportunities.
And the white glove is sort of the most expensive and most service-rich offering that you're doing under Ignition?
Well, I wouldn't call it expensive. It's certainly service-rich. It takes all of everything that we've learned as a publisher around selling, marketing our books. We're taking that sort of panoply of tools, that quiver of arrows. Let me see if I can come up with more. And applying it to these titles as if they were our own. And the beauty of the business model is if we don't do it well, we don't get anything. And if we don't do it well, they don't necessarily lose anything.
Yeah. Let's talk about ebook pricing, which sort of lies beneath a lot of the difference in approach between the Big Five and Open Road and others. Is there a simple way to describe Open Road's ebook pricing strategy versus how you see the pricing strategy of the Big Five?
On the highest level, I think I would talk about pricing as a component of a marketing strategy. Pricing by itself is just a simple tool. You really have to use pricing as part of a broader strategy. To the extent that we're talking about pricing, I mean, I think we can say, and as I alluded to earlier, there has been, with the Big Five in particular, with traditional publishing, a commitment to keeping ebook prices higher, which is a different approach than we took at Amazon, as you know, with Amazon Publishing and of course, with KDP and the authors there. But also very different than what we do here. We embrace ebooks, and to us, there is an optimal point where pricing and marketing and customer demand meets, and we are just constantly pitching ourselves in that direction. Our tools are such that we can respond to market conditions, but also, frankly, we can stimulate them. And that's sort of really the magic and the proprietariness of the system that folks here have developed.
Well, I had assumed that was a way to think about the difference, and I was surprised when I went into the Open Road list. I saw 4 books that were priced at $17.99 in the ebook version: American Stranger by David Plant, Upstairs at the White House, Color Purple. They may just be outliers, but are there circumstances where Open Road finds itself putting that high a price on an ebook as part of the whole marketing mix, or why would there be any books from Open Road that are that expensive as ebooks?
Well, so part of what you're seeing is a snapshot, and I guess the one thing I would emphasize is the dynamic nature of the way we move and the way we price. So I can't say with specificity why those particular titles you might have found at that price today. That, of course, is also, just to add, our digital list price. It's the price from which everything starts. So most of the time, you would not see the book at $17.99. But there might be, instances in time when you do.
Right. And the books that come out, especially on that early bird list, I mean, they're all great prices and great books. I mean, it's a very compelling offering that you put in front of people that subscribe to that every day. No,
it's amazing. And I think we're pushing up towards 20 and beyond in terms of the bargains we can deliver. And again, this really speaks to the voracious nature of our audience and its desire and hunger for more and more. And it really, the way I look at it is, Jane did and her team did an amazing job at growing this company to 10,000 titles. But it's getting harder and harder to acquire in that sort of traditional fashion. People cottoned onto what Jane was doing, and folks are trying to develop their backlist and do things with it. So the process of acquiring titles in sort of the traditional, we're going to publish this as a publisher in ebook form, it's become more challenging. At the same time, our audience hunger has grown. So you can see again how developing and pivoting into a marketing-focused business is really, at the same time, just serving our customers' interests.
Yeah,
they want more books than we could possibly acquire and publish on our own. It's a high-class problem.
As part of your fairly broad portfolio at Open Road, do you get drawn into reliance on your legal expertise for negotiating acquisition of new books or things in the legal realm?
Across the board. I mean, I think part of the attraction that the folks here had for me was the fact I could wear a bunch of different hats, whether it's the legal officer, and there's certainly author-related stuff there, but there's employment-related issues. There's a whole range of things. I'm very responsible and involved in maintaining our Amazon relationships as well. I tend to serve, I think, as the sort of face of the company, much as I did for Amazon when I was there. Somebody who's active and has been for years in the author and publishing community. I think that's another facet of the role. And again, new business development around Ignition and White Glove. So yeah, on any given day, as I said at the beginning, I have incredible opportunities to make mistakes. And that's really what drives that challenge. And frankly, I don't think I could have found a role like this anywhere else in publishing right now, and it's really what excites me.
It's an interesting change in your relationship with Amazon. You were sort of the outward-facing person in the book industry from Amazon for a while, and now you're dealing with Amazon as a business partner. In the last 2 months, have you seen anything about Amazon that surprised you, given that you're now interfacing with them in a different way?
No, the good thing is I was never an Amazon evangelist, even when I was speaking on their behalf and employed there for almost 10 years. I was always very honest about what I thought the good things were and what the challenges were, and I still am. So, no, I would say maybe the one thing that is different is I am experiencing firsthand what many other publishers feel, and that is, we're really dependent on one partner, and so that lack of diversity is at times, you have to adjust to it. But I also think that, frankly, no company in publishing right now is better aligned with Amazon in terms of our focus on the customer experience, in terms of our focus on ebooks and driving growth in ebooks, and in terms of our focus because of Amazon's success in driving business towards Amazon, because they create such a great customer experience for their customers. So I haven't been surprised by anything. If anything, what this has given me is sort of an opportunity to think about other parts of the company at Amazon. So we drive a lot of traffic to Amazon, so we're very much involved in the Associates program. We do a ton of POD because we have, I'd say, about 15% of our catalog we have print rights for. Oh. And really most of that business is not inventory-based. There's a few titles that we publish and keep inventory of and are sold in stores, but 95% of it is going to be driven by POD customers, and 95% of those are going to be shopping on Amazon, so there's that as well. We're looking at ways to integrate into the burgeoning Alexa ecosystem. For example, maybe building a skill. What are the early bird books today? Oh, yeah. And you could say, I don't want to say, I'm just going to call it that device. I actually already triggered it.
Yeah, Alexa. I turned mine off.
Yeah, exactly. It's really challenging if you're having a new business conversation with Amazon and it's around the device, because everybody's devices keep going off. So no, I haven't been surprised, and I'm really happy to be at a place that, frankly, jives with my own view of the world, bringing more books to more people, and really the beginning and end of everything we do, Len, starts with an audience, a reader, and an author, and we're either helping bring them together or keeping them apart, hopefully the former. And that is very much aligned with what we did at Amazon and what we're doing here at Open Road. So it's a very comfortable fit for me in that way.
I've been interested in the Kindle in Motion innovations. Dean Koontz had an Amazon original story that had some really subtle and effective animations to it. Is that something that only Amazon Publishing can do, or can someone like Open Road, who's open to new ways of publishing ebooks, somehow port that technology in, and you could pair a graphics person with an author to do a book that had that Kindle in Motion feature?
I'm confident other people can develop content using Kindle in Motion, but also other, we've seen a bunch of multimedia efforts, independent publishers do it. To me, always the bottom line is, and I'm not familiar with the title you were mentioning, but the bottom line is always, are you just adding stuff to add because it's cool, gee whiz, or does it really move the story forward? And to me, that's always the most compelling thing and the most important thing to think about. And so if the right opportunity came along, I'm sure we would consider it. We don't do a ton of front list publishing, right? We're really focused on backlist. So we would probably not be, again, if the right idea came along, we would do it. We're certainly set up to sell into stores if we need to.
Yeah, exactly. Are you reading anything wonderful in the short time you have available when you're not working so hard, or what's got your literary interest these days?
Most recently, I'm a big YA fan.
You can hear that our Skype connection failed us a little bit there. Jon was saying that he is a big young adults YA fan, and that one book he's reading is The Book of Dust, La Belle Sauvage. That's volume 1 of the Book of Dust series, and he had an earlier trilogy that this is an extension of.
And I've sort of dived into a bunch of the stuff that we have, in particular Agatha Christie. We're about to announce quite a nice acquisition of a very well-known author, British author. Can't really say who it is yet, but I've been reading a lot of his books.
Uh-huh.
And I'm really looking forward to bringing them to an audience that hasn't been able to read them in e-form in the States yet. But you're right. The real challenge is the amount of time and the lack of it that exists.
That's good. Well, I was delighted to see that you ended up at Open Road. I've talked to Jane a couple of times in the show, and Paul Slavin, the CEO, and it just seems like a fabulous hire and a good opportunity for you. So I wish you well at it.
Thanks, Len. It's a great team. Like I said, looking at the opportunity, looking at the people, looking at the way we think about bringing books and readers together and authors and readers together, it just seemed like an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
I have been speaking with Jon Fine, Senior Vice President and Publisher of Open Road Integrated Media. Thanks very much, John.
My pleasure, Len. Always happy to talk to you.
In content, I'll have a link to a book that I've been reading in small passages as part of my night reading collection of calming books for nearly a year. It's Summer Doorways, a memoir by the poet W.S. Merwin. It's set in France when Merwin was in his early 20s, and the book brings all the power of the poet's mastery of language to a prose account of his travels with his young wife. It reminded me of the Durrells in Corfu, a PBS series based on books by Gerald Durrell, and Open Road, as it happens, did a great job putting those books into ebook format when the series came out 2 years ago. Merwin is my favorite poet, and when I met Jane Friedman several years ago, it developed that she's also a big fan of his work. Open Road had published poetry of another great American contemporary poet, John Ashbery, who passed away last year, and I offered to reach out to Merwin to see if he might be interested in Open Road's publishing of a high-quality ebook version of his poetry books. I had his address from a visit that I made to his home in Hawaii years ago, but unfortunately I never did receive a reply to my query. I think that's too bad because, as far as I know, there are still no ebook versions of Merwin's poetry available. Maybe that's a good project for Jon Fine to work on, to see if he can follow up on that effort to get Merwin's poetry in ebook form. I'd like to turn now to some of your recent comments. Longtime listener Greg Montague provided a look into how Audible, a subsidiary of Amazon, works on updates to its app for iPhone and other iOS devices. Greg wrote, "Last week I noticed a new feature on my Audible iOS app. Whenever I navigated the app, I had to go through a home screen similar to the home screen on the Kindle. It featured a large ad or suggestion or recommendation or whatever you want to call it for a book. I wasn't interested in the book, so I started looking for a toggle to disable this new feature. As I'm sure you know, the Kindle allows users to turn off the home screen, but I couldn't find an on switch in the app. Customer service told me there was no way to disable this feature. I went to a Goodreads audiobook group to gripe, calling this a good app gone bad, only to learn that others using the same app version hadn't seen any ads. When I pressed Audible customer service for additional information, here is the reply I received. This is a new feature that's being tested by our product team, and feedback like yours below is what helps us to fine-tune new products prior to making them available to the entire customer population. The change hasn't been deployed to everyone, and this is the reason some of the other Audible customers you've spoken with aren't seeing it. Overall, we're looking to gather customer feedback regarding the change to influence the final experience. Our team is working closely with the iOS product team and will make sure your feedback and other customer feedback is discussed and considered. As of now, I'm not aware of any changes being made to allow the toggling of this feature within the app. I do think it's a great idea, and we'll make sure that it's considered." So Greg ended up being kind of a guinea pig of sorts for Audible's testing. He said, "I don't know what they will do or what their final design will be like, but I gave them some stern negative feedback." I checked Audible on my iPhone, and I've got the same version as Greg, but I'm not seeing that home screen that he's describing with the ads on it. So it's probably some kind of a random way of getting reaction from people by showing it to just certain users. This look behind the scenes by a very alert Audible customer shows, I think, the care that goes into any iteration of an Amazon customer interface and how thoroughly changes are tested before being introduced widely. Listener John Aga wrote a thoughtful response strongly disagreeing with the Financial Times column that I mentioned last week, titled "The Case for Ending Amazon's Dominance" by Tim Harford. Jon began by noting that Harford, quote, states clearly that Amazon did what he wished more American companies would do in the way Amazon achieved their success. As their reward, he advocates that Amazon should be cut into two pieces. Let us assume that the U.S. government did so. Amazon, cut in half, is now vulnerable to a company like China's Alibaba e-commerce giant in a hostile takeover scenario. Alibaba would now have a foothold in the U.S. without competing. Alibaba would now become the new Amazon in the U.S. with the backing of China. Alibaba would now be the dominant e-commerce player in the U.S., not by playing the game better than anyone else, but because they are big and safe behind a very high wall in China. You can be sure China would never allow a U.S. company to do the same to Alibaba. I think that's a good point, Jon. Thanks for sharing it with us. Listener E.O. Lake Stubblehouse wrote to thank me for mentioning an Amazon original TV series titled The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which won 2 Golden Globe Awards. I'm very happy that Amy Sherman Palladino has done another significant series, E.O. Lake wrote. I was hoping for that event when Gilmore Girls ended. She is exceptionally talented in the combo of stories and humor. Lake said he has bought the first Jane Hawk book in the new series by Dean Koontz, who was my guest a couple of shows ago. I'm not a great thriller or darkness fan, Lake writes, but the character does sound intriguing. I like strong and intelligent characters. Examples are my favorite characters in Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, the police captain Vimes, and the old witches, as well as the very young witch Tiffany Aching. Thanks, Lake. I'm going to include links to all these books being mentioned in the comments. Garrett Riley loved the Koontz interview and writes, I probably have read 25 or 30 of his books. Nice question about his love of dogs. I remember when I went on a mission trip to the Philippines in 1995, I brought 6 Dean Koontz paperbacks in my backpack and read almost all of them on the plane or during my downtime there. That was when books were my entertainment and not phones and iPads. If you'd like to try one Dean Koontz thriller, Garrett recommends Watchers, first published in 1987. Garrett is not alone in liking that thriller about a man, a dog, and a terrifying threat. It's rated 4.8 out of 5.0 stars based on 2,108 customer reviews at Amazon. And finally, from Jean Rampel in Paris, today's interview with Koontz was very fine, a very talented and modest man. I totally agree with him about Eliot's 4 quartets. I only wish you had asked him about that one line from a song from Paul Simon that inspired a book. As for Jane Hawk, she reminds me of Red Reddington in The Blacklist. Have you seen this Netflix series? One of my favorites. He is so proper and polite and yet so deadly. Dean's The Book of Counted Sorrows very much reminded me of Fernando Pessoa's The Book of Disquietude, another one of my favorites. Merci, Jean. I found the answer to your question about the Paul Simon lyric in a post at deankoontz.com, the author's personal website. The song, it turns out, was Patterns, and the line was, my life is made of patterns that can scarcely be controlled. The title of the book it inspired is Life Expectancy, published in 2004. Thanks to all of you who correspond with me about the show and other topics. I'm always glad to hear from you at podchronicles@gmail.com. You can also leave comments at the show notes each week, thekindlechronicles.com. And if you are in a general commenting mood, you might want to leave a review of the Kindle Chronicles at iTunes, which will help others learn about the show as we approach the 500th episode on March 2nd and the 10-year anniversary of the show on July 26th. Pretty amazing. Next week's guest will be Meg Gardner, a novelist whose next thriller, Into the Black Nowhere, will be released on January 30th by Dutton, an imprint of Penguin Random House. Stephen King has called her crime and suspense series the finest he's come across in the last 20 years. I am just a few chapters into an advance uncorrected proof of Gardner's new book, the second in her Unsub series, and I'm already scared. Unsub, by the way, is FBI speak for unknown subject. And this one, the subject is a serial killer terrorizing women in southern Texas. The heroine of the series is FBI profiler Caitlin Hendricks, whose first adventure was titled Unsub, released 6 months ago, and it's rated 4.5 out of 5 stars at Amazon. the publicist at Dutton had reached out to me with an offer for an advance reader copy of a book by Brad Parks. It was going to be published in March. I thought, that's great, and I asked if I could interview him for next week because I needed a guest for next week. It turns out that Dutton, an imprint of Penguin Random House, a little more precise on timing of publicity than I'm used to, so they didn't want to have Brad Parks on so far in advance of his book, so they offered two other authors whose books were coming out fairly soon, and asked if I wanted to interview one of them. Well, that turned out to be Meg Gardner, Gardiner, and Lisa Gardner, whose book Look For Me is coming out on February 6th. So I looked around at YouTube and just saw some of the interviews, and I was a little bit more taken with Meg Gardner, so that was the one I said that I'd like to interview. I wasn't familiar with either of their work. Well, when I told Darlene that I had chosen Meg Gardner over Lisa Gardner, she says, "You're kidding. Lisa Gardner, Tom and I, our friend from Wyoming, we read all of her books. She's fantastic. You should have asked to interview Lisa Gardner, not Meg Gardner." Oops. What can I say? This is Len Edgerly for the Kindle Chronicles from Denver, Colorado. I really appreciate your taking the time to listen to my show. Have a great day. Bye.